Hey everyone, thank you for joining me. I'm a guy called Joe, and this is Bootstrapping Tools Community Counsel, where we talk about concepts and theories that would help you either elevate yourself, your team, or your company. So these are typically issues or problems or concepts that you can't really solve for by building a tool. This is more kind of like operationally, or how you build up the reputation or the processes or operations for yourself, your company, or your team. Now, today's topic, we're actually going to talk about specifically how to work with an engineer or developer as a business team member. You might think that it's go tell them what to do and then it gets built and it's all just magic behind the box. But of course, there are a lot of times you'll hear the stories, right? Engineers think that the business team people are unreasonable, and then the business team folks are like, why? How come the engineers can't ship something reliable? So you get a lot of that conflict, and hopefully after you watch this video, you can figure out a better path forward to work with your engineering team or your development team. So the first thing I want to go over are the things that you shouldn't do. And this really has to do with, things that might sound a little bit obvious, but of course, I think it's important for us to state it here, just because I've seen it happen a lot of the times, and I gotta tell the folks like, hey, let's don't say that. That's we're all a team here. But first one is, let's not say that it has to be done within a certain time frame, especially if you haven't spoken to the engineering team beforehand, because this is a lot of pressure on them, and you're just telling them, basically just giving them a deadline without really giving them context. So if there is something, and there's always going to be a valid case where something needs to be finished by a certain time frame, but when that happens, just make sure you give them the context, right? Explain to him, hey, can we get this done by Friday? Because we have an investor call on Friday, and it'd be really great to have this data or this product feature released by then so that we can demo it. That would be a great way to do it, but don't just tell them that this needs to be done by Friday and that's it, because that's not helpful. I mean, you can imagine if it was someone on the business team, marketing or sales or whatever, they probably wouldn't like that either. So just don't do that. It's not a really good move. Doesn't make you look good, doesn't make anybody look good. Second thing is, don't tell the engineers what to build. I've had a lot of times where people have come over and said, we just need this table. That's it. We just need this table with the information, or we need this button, or we need to just like make this thing. Don't do that. I mean, the engineers are smart people. They're incredibly talented. They program in languages that you even know exist, right? So you've ever heard of JavaScript or Ruby or Python or any of these things, or Rust or whatever it might be? Point is, don't tell them what to build. They got into engineering or development or programming because they're out there to solve problems. They want to solve a problem through programming, right? They want to build cool things. So don't tell them what to build. More so, tell them about a problem that is being faced, or a goal that you have. So instead of saying like, hey, I want you to build a table with this data for me, say more so like, hey, I'm trying to access this data in this way. I need these parameters, and we're going to use that to generate this report that we're doing. Chances are they might think about it and be like, hey, you know what? We can just generate the report for you instead of giving you this raw data and then creating the report outside of it using Excel and a bunch of like VLOOKUP formulas. They'll just generate the report for you at the end of the day, so you skip all of that manual troublesome that you have to do. So involve the engineers a little early. Tell them about what the goal is, what the problem that you're trying to solve is, and together you guys can come up with a solution that will benefit the entire company, the entire team, better than it would have by you just telling them what you think should be built. Same goes for product managers. Don't do it, right? Even though you've done a lot of user research and you have like your guts telling you this is the right way to do it, don't tell them what to do. Bring them all the evidence and then give them an option saying, hey, I was thinking about this this way. The engineers might come back and say like, hey, that's a good way to do it, let's do that. Or they might say, hey, that's a good way, what if we also added this or added that onto it? And then at the end of the day, you have a better product than you would have if it was just what you thought. Key there is collaboration. Number 3, don't exclude them from decisions. Let's say you're working on a product, right, or a project or something like that, and then 2 weeks in, the user says something, you're like, oh, great, we're not gonna do this one feature. Don't just go to them and say like, hey, we're not doing this anymore, or tell them like, hey, the deadline's actually earlier now. We need to get this done within 2 weeks instead of 3 weeks. Just don't exclude them. It's nobody likes that. If they had a decision about the overall feature set or the architecture of what was being built and they didn't include you, and that happened to have downstream effects on your timelines, you wouldn't like it. So just don't do it. Treat them like you would want to be treated. And then the last thing is, and I just want to point this out, don't generalize the team when highlighting successes. I've seen this happen a lot where a product gets released or a feature gets released, and then you see the stats or the metrics go through the roof. You're hitting goals. People just go like, shout out to the engineering team for doing this. Shout out to blah, 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 so-and-so for doing this. Right? We couldn't have done it without you. It's not the way to do it. You're generalizing the team. And most cases, if you're working at a company that isn't a startup company, the engineering team is probably pretty big, right? It's probably like 50, 100, 200 people, a lot of folks in there for a lot of different teams. You want to make sure that you're highlighting the folks who deserve it. It's the same way that it would go with anyone not on the engineering team and on other teams. You don't want to generalize that. You want to make sure that these are individuals that have certain skill sets, that put in time and effort into building a products and resolving a problem or hitting those goals or those milestones that we set forth as a team. So make sure you highlight individuals when you're highlighting the success of a product or a project. Now, let's go into some of the things that you should do. So, bring them to the conversation early. If there's a new potential feature that might be get built or a new potential product or something like that, loop them in. Some engineers might ask you not to include them in client calls, and other engineers might really like that because they get to talk to the client and really ask them questions straightforward. Either way, don't bar them from it and don't force them to do something. Just bring them to the conversation, let them know what's going on. If it's not with the client, then it's just with you and the rest of the team. Just make sure that you guys are talking constantly so that if there are any changes that need to occur, the engineers or the development team can start thinking about what might need to happen in their code in order to support whatever changes are happening. Additionally, share user interviews with them. They, like anybody else, would be able to contribute the most if they understand what the problem is. So having context is really important. I said in another video about how to interview for a product manager, how to suss out who's a good product manager. And that's like someone who collaborates a lot and is very transparent with their user research. In this case, share user interviews with them. If you're the sales team and you're hearing things from the clients, right? They're saying, oh, we're not going to go with you because we're going to go with your competitor, right? Like share that with the engineers so that they can understand the pains that you as a salesperson are going through because we're lacking in product or feature X, Y, or Z. They should know that, and just make sure you share that information with them. Next thing is being flexible with the project scope or the time scope. We all totally understand that there are needs and necessities, and we have to ship something by a certain time. We have to ship a certain product. It's the product doesn't work at all without a certain feature. Well, you have to be flexible with it. You can't say I want the golden product within a week. There's no negotiation on either side of it. So what I like to say is when it comes to a project that you guys are working on or an iteration to a product, that it could either be feature scope based or time scope based. Time scope based being that you have to release it at a certain date. So as many features that you can realistically fit into it within that time frame is what you're going to get. No more, no less. And if it's a feature scope based one, then you're saying that this product, this release that we're doing has to have these features. I don't care when it gets shipped, it has to get shipped as a bundle like that. So you have to choose between one or the others. As a business team member, if you're the one who's the primary stakeholder or you're the one leading it, you're the project lead at your company for this, or you're the product owner or you're the product manager, make sure that you're identifying early on whether or not the thing that you're trying to build is a feature scope or it's a time scope, and make that really clear in the beginning so that there are no questions, and that if anything does come up like feature creeping, or scope creep, that it's very clear that the time is going to increase, or if you're changing the timeline, that the amount of features involved in that release are going to decrease or increase. And then the last thing here is just want to talk about, highlighting individuals. I mentioned this in the don't do's, where you generalize, for the do, the thing that you should do is highlighting individual wins. So if so-and-so in the engineering team, specifically worked on this project, make sure you give them a direct shout out with their name, right? Give them kudos for it. It's really important that you highlight the individual contributors, because it's the individual contributors who are putting in the actual work to make that product happen, to write that code. And this is more than just the engineering team. This is something that engineers, they're not really going to stand on our soapbox and market their wins and all that. So you got to do, like, sometimes you have to do it for them. Some of them they will, and they do like that. But if you're ever giving highlights on the successes of a particular product or a project, make sure that you're isolating individual people to let the rest of the company know, the rest of the team know that they went above and beyond, and they're the reason that there was success there. So make sure you just do that. Individual shout outs, individual contributors are the ones who can grow into people managers, into individual leaders, or just overall the people who drive the culture forward and drive the product forward. So make sure you highlight them, because they're the ones who are going to grow with the business as the business grows, thanks to their efforts. But that's basically it for this subject. We're just talking about how to work with engineering. A lot of it is really similar to how you would want to work with any other team member, really, right? Just treat them as you normally would. Don't tell them what to do, right? Because that's their job to figure out how to execute or how to approach a problem. Don't give them unreasonable deadlines. Make sure you're working with them, collaborate with them, treat them as peers, essentially. I know a lot of companies out there. I've totally heard the horror stories, and I'm sure you've heard the horror stories too, where business folks would just treat the engineering team as, basically a factory output, like where they just churn through requests. Like, that's not how it is. Think of it more as a collaborative effort. That team is probably going to be one of your most valuable assets as a company, especially as we're going into, more of a tech focused world, where everything is reliant on technology and on the ability to automate, and the technology piece of your company is what's going to make you different from your competitors. So make sure you treat them right, invest in it, and get them involved in actually solving the bigger pain points or the problems of your company. But that's it for this video, Community Counsel with bootstrapping tools. If you have any questions or comments, please make sure to drop a comment in the section below. We're always here to help. Happy to answer any questions. And of course, if you have your own opinions on this, feel free to drop a message. Always looking forward to hearing about other people's perspectives. This is just my perspective on this matter, of course. And with my experience at various different public companies and startups and private companies. So if you have an opinion, please drop it below. Of course, if you like the video, please make sure to hit that like button. It's the best way to support this channel, and make sure that if you liked it, other people who just like you, scrappy bootstrappers, or people looking to upgrade themselves and elevate their own skill sets, can find this video. So please hit that like button. And we also have many other videos coming out, whether that's tutorials and guides, or even more community counsel or community support videos. So hit that subscribe button and make sure to hit that bell as well, so that you get notified as soon as we release the next video. But I'm a guy called Joe. This is Bootstrapping Tools Community Counsel. It's been a pleasure, and we're out.